A poor girl helps a stranger, misses her interview, unaware he's a millionaire CEO, and... Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The wind cut through the city like a sharp blade that morning. The sun had barely risen, and the gray sky hung low over the busy streets of Chicago. Maya Torres clutched her worn leather portfolio against her chest as she hurried down Lincoln Avenue. Her sneakers slapped against the wet pavement, splashing puddles onto her faded jeans. She had exactly 15 minutes to make it to her job interview, the one chance she had to change her life. She whispered to herself with every step. "Come on, Maya. You can do this." The air smelled of cold rain and gasoline. A city bus hissed as it pulled to the curb, and people rushed past her with umbrellas and steaming coffee cups. She crossed the street, her heart pounding. Then she heard a muffled groan somewhere behind her. Turning, she saw a man stumble near the corner, one hand pressed against his chest. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit that was now splattered with mud. Before Maya could think, he collapsed onto the sidewalk, hitting the ground hard. "Sir? Sir, are you all right?" she called, dropping to her knees beside him. The man did not answer. His breathing was shallow, his lips pale. Maya looked around, desperate. People passed without stopping, their eyes sliding away. She shouted, "Someone call 911," but no one slowed down. Her pulse raced. She could keep running to her interview, or she could stay. Her decision came like instinct. She slipped off her thin denim jacket and folded it under his head. "Hold on, please. You are going to be okay." She reached into her bag for the handkerchief she always carried, white with tiny stitched initials on one corner, RC. She pressed it against his hand, which had a small cut from the fall. Blood soaked through the fabric, warm against her fingers. After what felt like forever, she spotted a yellow taxi slowing near the curb. Maya waved frantically. "Please! He needs to get to a hospital." The driver hesitated but opened the door. With all her strength, she helped lift the man inside. He was heavier than he looked. His head rested against her shoulder, his breathing ragged. "Take us to St. Mary's Hospital, please." "Hurry," she said. The taxi sped through the morning traffic, tires hissing on the wet road. Maya held the man upright as best she could, whispering to keep herself calm. "You are going to be fine, okay? Just breathe. Stay with me." She glanced at the dashboard clock, 8:48. Her interview was at 9 o'clock sharp, across town. She felt a sharp ache in her stomach. The realization sank in she was not going to make it. When they reached the hospital, 2 nurses rushed outside with a stretcher. Maya stepped out, her clothes damp and her hands shaking. They lifted the man out of the cab and pushed him through the automatic doors. A nurse turned to her. "Are you family?" "No," Maya stammered. "I just found him on the street. He collapsed. Please, just help him." The nurse nodded and disappeared inside. For a moment, Maya stood frozen in the cold air. The taxi driver cleared his throat. "Miss, you coming?" She blinked, realizing she still had the man's handkerchief clutched tightly in her fist. The white fabric was stained, dark red now. She looked down at the initials again, R.C., and felt something twist deep in her chest. By the time she reached the building where her interview had been scheduled, it was already over. The lobby clock read 10:15. Her shoes left small wet prints on the marble floor as she stood there, breathing hard, clutching the ruined handkerchief. For a long moment, Maya did not move. The city outside went on as if nothing had happened. People hurried past the glass doors, umbrellas open, conversations flowing. She exhaled slowly and whispered, "At least he is alive." No. The wind outside picked up again, scattering leaves across the steps. She tucked the blood-stained handkerchief carefully into her portfolio and walked back into the gray morning, unaware that the stranger she had just saved would soon change everything she knew about luck, kindness, and destiny. The next morning came with a heavy gray sky and the faint sound of traffic outside Maya's small apartment window. The walls were thin, The heater groaned, and the smell of cheap coffee filled the air. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at her phone, scrolling through rejection emails. Each one said the same thing in polite words. "We appreciate your interest, but the position has been filled." Her reflection in the cracked mirror across the room looked exhausted. She brushed a strand of dark hair from her face and whispered, "You missed one interview. And now, everything is falling apart." Rent was due in 5 days. The landlord had already slipped another warning note under her door. She opened her wallet, 3 $1 bills and some loose coins. That was all. Still, when she thought of the man she had helped, lying pale and motionless in the back seat of the taxi, a strange peace lingered. She did not know his name, but she hoped he had survived. It was the right thing to do, she murmured, though her chest ached with worry. She dressed in a faded blue sweater and jeans, grabbed her sketchbook, and stepped into the cold air. The wind smelled of rain and city smoke. She walked to the public library to use the computers for job applications. The librarian nodded kindly when she entered. It was always warm there, always quiet. She found a seat near the window, her fingers trembling as she typed. Hours passed. Afternoon sunlight slid across the floor, pale and uncertain. She filled out one application after another, until the computer screen blurred. Her stomach growled. She had skipped breakfast to save the last of her bread for dinner. At the corner of the library desk, her sketchbook lay open. Inside were pages of pencil drawings, street scenes, faces, hands, and her favorite sketch, a small park with an old oak tree, drawn from memory. Her mother used to say that art was a mirror of hope. Maya smiled faintly and whispered, "Hope is cheap. It just takes time." When the library closed, she walked home beneath a cloudy sunset, her shoes soaking through puddles. The city looked different now, tired, but alive. She passed a street musician playing a slow tune on a saxophone. For a moment she stopped, closed her eyes, and let the sound wrap around her like warmth. At the corner near her apartment building, she saw a small crowd gathered around a street vendor. The smell of roasted peanuts drifted through the air. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but she kept walking. She could not spare even $1. Inside her apartment, the light flickered weakly. She hung her jacket by the door and sat on the edge of her bed. The silence pressed close. From her bag, she pulled out the white handkerchief, the one with the initials, R.C. The fabric was still stained, faintly pink from the blood. She held it between her fingers, running her thumb over the stitched letters. "Who are you?" she whispered. "R.C. "Huh." The name echoed in her head as if it meant something, as if those 2 letters might someday matter. She folded the handkerchief carefully and placed it inside her sketchbook, between 2 pages. That night, she dreamed of rain again, the same cold morning, the man collapsing, the flash of his silver watch as she caught him before he fell. She woke before dawn, heart pounding. The image burned into her mind. When the sun finally rose, she forced herself up, brewed another weak cup of coffee, and went out to search for work again. She stopped by a diner that had a help-wanted sign taped to the window. The manager shook his head. "Filled yesterday," he said, not unkindly. She smiled anyway. "Thank you." By afternoon, her feet ached. She sat on a bench outside a grocery store, watching people carry their shopping bags, chatting on their phones, living lives that seemed so far from hers. But somewhere deep inside, she refused to give in. She took out her sketchbook again and began to draw the curve of the street, the reflection of the sky in a puddle, a woman holding a child's hand. Her pencil moved slowly, almost like breathing. Kindness is not useless, she thought. It is a seed. She closed the book, tucked it under her arm, and stood as the wind picked up. The city lights flickered on one by one, glowing softly against the darkening sky. She had no idea that only a few miles away, in a private hospital suite, a man with dark hair and a faint scar above his eyebrow had just opened his eyes for the first time in weeks. His first word was not clear, just a whisper. The girl, and somewhere across the city, Maya walked home through the twilight, unaware that fate had already begun to circle back toward her. 2 weeks passed before Maya found the courage to return to St. Mary's Hospital. She told herself it was only to check if the man she had helped was alive, nothing more. The weather had turned warmer, and the morning sun glowed faintly through thin clouds. She wore the same faded blue sweater and carried her sketchbook pressed against her chest. The receptionist at the front desk looked up as she approached. "Good morning, miss. Can I help you?" "Yes," Maya said softly. "A few weeks ago, I brought in a man who collapsed on Lincoln Avenue. I never got his name, but he had a dark suit and a silver watch. I just wanted to know if he is all right." The receptionist frowned slightly, typing on her computer. "Do you remember the date?" "About 15 days ago," Maya answered. The woman checked the records for a moment, then shook her head. "I am sorry, but I cannot give out patient information without family permission." Maya nodded, forcing a polite smile. "I understand. Thank you." "Oh." As she turned to leave, she glanced toward the hallway that led to the private suites. For a brief second, she thought she saw a familiar nurse, the same one who had helped that morning. Their eyes met. The nurse recognized her immediately and hurried over. "You were the young woman who brought in Mr. Carter, right?" Maya froze. "Carter?" "Yes, Ryan Carter," the nurse said, lowering her voice. "You might have read about him. He is the chief executive officer of Carter Tech. He collapsed from exhaustion that morning. You saved his life." Maya's mouth fell open. The name echoed in her mind. RC. The initials on the handkerchief. She whispered, "Is he all right?" The nurse smiled gently. "He woke up 3 days ago. He is recovering well, but still under supervision. I think he would like to know you asked about him." Maya thanked her quietly and walked out of the hospital in a daze. The sunlight seemed sharper now, bouncing off the windshields of parked cars. A CEO. She had helped a CEO. She remembered the mud on his suit, the pale color of his lips, the weight of his body in her arms. He had looked nothing like a powerful man that day. Back at her apartment, she set her sketchbook on the table and opened it. Between 2 pages lay the white handkerchief. She lifted it carefully, studying the faint stain and the stitched initials. It felt heavier now, as if it carried meaning she was not ready to understand. For days after, she found herself replaying that morning in her mind. The sound of the rain, the panic in her chest, the way no one else had stopped. What if she had walked away? What if he had died there on the sidewalk? The thought made her shiver. One evening, as she was sketching by the window, her phone buzzed. An email notification popped up. Carter Foundation Community Hiring Event. They were hosting an open call for creative positions, seeking local artists and designers for a social project. Her breath caught. It had to be the same company. She stared at the screen for a long time before whispering, "It is just coincidence." Still, something inside her stirred hope, fear, curiosity. Maybe fate was giving her one more chance. The next morning, she took the bus downtown to the address listed in the email. The building was enormous, glass and steel rising above the city. The logo Carter Tech shone in silver letters across the entrance. Her palms were sweating as she stepped inside. The lobby was bright, filled with people holding portfolios like hers. A woman in a gray blazer handed her a visitor badge. "Welcome to the Carter Foundation event. You can take the elevator to the 6th floor." Maya nodded, clutching her sketchbook tighter. Her heart thudded in her chest as the elevator doors closed. When they opened again, she found herself in a wide hall lined with art displays and presentation boards. Music played softly in the background. She took a deep breath and joined the line of applicants waiting for interviews. Her mind raced. What if he was there? What if he recognized her? She tried to push the thought aside, focusing on the papers in her hands. When her turn came, a young assistant led her to a quiet conference room. "Someone from the executive team will see you shortly," he said before leaving. Maya sat down, smoothing her hair nervously. The room was silent except for the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. Her eyes drifted to the window overlooking the skyline. The sunlight caught on a distant building, dazzling bright. Then she heard the door open behind her. A man stepped in, tall, composed, wearing a charcoal gray suit. His eyes were calm but sharp, the kind that had seen both power and pain. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "Maya Torres," he said slowly. "We finally meet again." Her breath caught in her throat. She turned, and the world seemed to tilt slightly. It was him, the stranger from that rainy morning. Ryan Carter. The man whose life she had saved. The man whose initials were stitched into the handkerchief lying inside her sketchbook. He smiled faintly. I owe you a thank you. Maya's hands trembled as she whispered. You remember me? Of course I do, he said softly. Some debts you cannot forget. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by sunlight and city noise far below, their stories finally began to cross. For a few seconds, Maya could not speak. Her pulse thudded in her ears, and the world around her blurred. The man who stood before her looked entirely different from the one she had carried into the taxi that morning. The dark circles under his eyes were gone, replaced by quiet confidence and a faint warmth that made it hard to look away. Ryan Carter moved closer, his footsteps steady against the polished floor. I have been wanting to find you, he said, his voice low but sincere. The doctors told me what happened, but no one could tell me your name, until today. Maya swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. I did not expect to see you here, Mr. Carter. He smiled lightly. Then maybe fate has better plans than we do. He gestured toward the chair across from him. Please, sit. You came for the Foundation's creative project, right? Yes, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I saw the announcement yesterday. Good, he replied, taking a seat opposite her. We are developing a community art program. We want local designers to help us tell real stories of compassion. It seems fitting that the person who inspired the project should be part of it. Maya blinked. Inspired it? Ryan nodded. That morning changed a lot of things for me. I realized how fragile success can be, and how one act of kindness can hold more power than an empire. His words made her throat tighten. You do not owe me anything. I just did what anyone would have done. He leaned back slightly, studying her. That is not true. I remember people walking by, pretending not to see me. You were the only one who stopped. Quote. Silence filled the room for a moment, soft and heavy. Maya clasped her hands together on the table, afraid her fingers would shake. I did not save you, expecting anything in return. I know, he said gently. That is why it matters. He opened a folder in front of him and slid a document across the table. This is an employment proposal. It is a 3-month contract with the Carter Foundation. You would assist our creative director and help develop visuals for our outreach projects. Maya's eyes widened. You are offering me a job? I am offering you an opportunity, he said simply. If you accept it, I want you to start next week. Her mind spun. Only days ago she had been struggling to buy food, and now a CEO was sitting across from her, handing her a lifeline. I do not know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Ryan said, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. You earned this. She hesitated. I am not sure I belong in a place like this. Oh? You belong here more than you think, he replied. You remind me that compassion is the heart of every great company. That is something I cannot teach. Maya looked down at the papers again. The salary was more than she had ever imagined earning. But beyond the numbers, what struck her most was the faith in his tone. He was not giving her charity. He was giving her trust. Finally, she nodded slowly. All right, I will do it. Ryan extended his hand across the table. Welcome to the Carter Foundation, Miss Torres. She shook his hand, her palm cold and trembling. His grip was warm, steady, and surprisingly gentle. When the meeting ended, Maya stepped back into the elevator, her mind spinning with disbelief. As the doors closed, she caught her reflection in the mirror, tired but smiling for the first time in weeks. Outside, the afternoon sunlight painted golden streaks across the city skyline. She clutched her sketchbook to her chest, whispering under her breath, You see, Mom? Kindness really can come back. Meanwhile, in his office, Ryan watched from the window as she exited the building. He had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from him, money, power, reputation, but that morning on Lincoln Avenue, a stranger had given him something no one else ever had. Humanity. He turned to his assistant and said, Make sure she has everything she needs to start next week. Oh, the assistant nodded. Yes, Mr. Carter. Ryan looked out again at the busy street below. Somewhere deep inside, the image of that rainy morning lingered the sight of her kneeling beside him. Her hands trembling but determined. For the first time in a long while, he felt grateful simply to be alive. And though he did not yet understand it, That feeling was only the beginning of something far greater waiting ahead. The first day at the Carter Foundation felt like stepping into another world. The office was bright and modern, filled with tall glass walls and the hum of quiet productivity. Maya clutched her sketchbook close as she followed the human resources assistant through the hallway. Her badge still felt strange around her neck, as if she were wearing someone else's life. When she entered the creative department, she was introduced to a small team of designers. They greeted her politely, though some curious eyes lingered longer than others. Most of them had read the internal memo, Ryan Carter's mysterious new hire. Her desk was by the window, overlooking the city skyline. She sat down, ran her fingers across the smooth surface, and took a deep breath. For the first time in months, she felt the faint spark of purpose. Around mid-morning, Ryan stopped by. He wore a navy blue suit, no tie, his expression calm but focused. The room straightened at once when he entered. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice even but kind. "We are building something meaningful here. I want this team to remember that stories have power, especially the ones born from kindness." His gaze paused briefly on Maya. She lowered her eyes quickly, but he smiled faintly before turning to leave. After he was gone, her coworker whispered, "You know him personally, right?" Maya hesitated. "I met him once," she said simply. "I was just in the right place at the right time." The days passed quickly. Maya poured herself into her work, sketching layouts for posters, digital designs, and community displays. Every evening she stayed late, tracing ideas until her pencil smudged gray across the paper. Ryan occasionally walked past her desk, offering short nods or small words of encouragement. One night, as the office emptied, he found her still working under the soft glow of the desk lamp. "You should go home, Miss Torres," he said gently. "It is late." She smiled tiredly. "I just want to finish this section. The new campaign banner, Hands That Help, it needs something real, not just a logo." Ryan stepped closer, glancing at her sketches. The drawings showed people helping one another, strangers crossing paths, hands reaching out through rain. His expression softened. "It is beautiful. You understand the message better than anyone." "Art." She looked up, startled by the sincerity in his voice. "I just draw what I believe." "Then do not stop believing," he said quietly. After he left, she sat there for a while, staring at the window reflection. Maybe he truly meant it. Maybe her life was beginning to change. Weeks turned into a rhythm of progress. The project grew, and Maya's ideas started appearing in meetings and presentations. Ryan often included her when discussing outreach plans, asking for her opinion as if her voice mattered. Each time, it caught her off guard. One Friday afternoon, after a long meeting, Ryan gathered the team. "We will present our campaign to the board next month. I want Maya to co-lead the creative section. Her work has captured the spirit of this foundation." Murmurs rippled through the room. Maya's heart pounded. "Sir, I am not sure I am ready for that." He met her eyes. "You were ready the moment you stopped on that rainy street." For a long second, the room was silent. Then the team began to applaud. Maya tried to hide her tears, but a few slipped down anyway. That evening, as she packed her things, she noticed a small envelope on her desk. Inside was a handwritten note. "Some debts cannot be repaid, only shared. Thank you for reminding me why this company exists. Ryan Carter." "Oh." She pressed the paper to her chest, feeling something warm spread through her. Gratitude, disbelief, maybe something deeper she could not yet name. Outside, the sky turned a soft gold as the sun dipped below the skyline. For the first time since her father's passing, she felt certain that she was standing exactly where she was meant to be. The weeks that followed brought quiet transformation. Maya's world, once filled with worry and survival, now carried rhythm and meaning. Each morning she arrived early, her sketchbook in hand, ready to create. Each evening she left long after the others, her desk lamp glowing like a small beacon against the city's night sky. Ryan often stopped by her workspace without warning. Sometimes he offered suggestions, sometimes only stood watching her draw in silence. One evening, as she adjusted the lighting for a presentation board, he said softly, "You work harder than anyone I have ever met." Maya smiled faintly. "Hard work is easier than worrying about failing." His gaze lingered on her for a moment. "You are not failing, Maya. You are rebuilding." Those words stayed with her for days. She began to see Ryan not just as her employer but as someone quietly wounded beneath his success. There was a stillness in him, a man who had spent too long in control, afraid to slow down. Their connection deepened through small moments. A shared elevator ride filled with laughter over spilled coffee. A late-night brainstorming session when the power briefly went out, leaving them in candlelight from the emergency lamps. He had smiled then, saying, "It feels almost peaceful without the noise." Maya had laughed softly. "Maybe the world is asking you to rest for once." He had tilted his head, studying her. "And maybe you are the reason I finally can." The words caught her off guard, leaving a quiet flutter in her chest. After that night, she found herself thinking of him more often, his calm voice, his sharp eyes softening when he spoke to her. When the foundation team visited the community center for a site review, Maya saw a new side of him. Children ran up to greet Ryan, tugging at his sleeves, calling his name. He crouched down to talk with them, asking about school, laughing easily. The staff respected him deeply, not because of his wealth, but because of his sincerity. Later that afternoon, they walked through a half-finished art mural on the wall, one that Maya had designed. Ryan stopped to admire it. "You turned a blank wall into something alive," he said. "That is what you do to people too." Maya looked away, embarrassed but smiling. "Art heals," she said softly. He nodded. "So does kindness." The ride back to the office was quiet. The air between them carried unspoken things, gratitude, curiosity, and something tender, neither dared name. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Maya lingered in the office again. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass windows. She stood by the view, arms folded, her reflection overlapping with the skyline. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Ryan was there, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might still be here," he said, offering one to her. "It is not much, but it is warm." She took it with both hands. "Thank you." They stood side by side, sipping in silence. Finally he spoke. "Do you ever think about that day on Lincoln Avenue?" Maya nodded slowly. "Sometimes. It feels like another lifetime." "For me, it feels like the day my life began again," he said quietly. "If you had not stopped," she interrupted gently. "Do not say that. You were meant to stay." Ryan looked at her then, his expression unreadable but full of feeling. "Maybe I was meant to stay because you were meant to appear." The air felt heavier, filled with something electric yet calm. Maya's heart raced, but she did not move. For the first time, she saw not the powerful CEO, but a man standing in front of her, human, fragile, grateful. The moment passed as he glanced away, clearing his throat. "We have a big presentation next week. I will need your help preparing it." She smiled, understanding his retreat. "You already have it." As he left, Maya watched him disappear down the hallway. Her reflection in the glass whispered back to her, "Something is changing." And somewhere deep inside, she knew she was right. The morning of the presentation arrived bright and cool. The Carter Foundation boardroom buzzed with quiet anticipation. Maya stood near the window, holding her sketches close to her chest, watching the early sunlight spill across the skyline. Ryan entered a few minutes later, calm and composed, nodding at her as if to say, "You are ready." The meeting began smoothly. Ryan introduced the campaign, speaking with confidence about community renewal and the Hands That Help initiative. When it was Maya's turn to present, her voice trembled at first, but as she showed the mural designs and shared her story of why kindness matters, the room fell silent. She ended with words that came straight from her heart. "Kindness is not a transaction. It is a choice that outlives the moment." Applause filled the air. Ryan smiled proudly. For a fleeting instant, everything felt right. But perfection never lasts. Later that week, the company's social media account began to flood with rumors. Someone had leaked photos of Maya and Ryan working late together. The captions were cruel, suggesting favoritism, calling her the poor girl who caught the CEO's attention. Within hours, gossip spread across every department. When Maya arrived at work the next morning, whispers followed her through the hallway. Conversation stopped when she passed by. On her desk, someone had left a printed article from a gossip blog, with her photo circled in red ink. Her hands shook as she crumpled it and threw it away. Ryan called her to his office that afternoon. His face was tight with anger and worry. "I am sorry this is happening," he said. I am investigating how this started. She forced a small nod. People think I got this job because of you. He leaned forward, his voice steady. You earned it. You do not owe anyone an explanation. But they do not believe that, she whispered. And I am not sure the board does either. Ryan's jaw tightened. I will protect your name. I promise. The door opened suddenly. Claire, the company's public relations director, stepped in. Ryan, she began carefully. The board wants you to suspend Miss Torres until the investigation is complete. They say it is for public image. Maya's heart dropped. Suspend me? Ryan stood abruptly. That will not happen. She has done nothing wrong. Claire's tone turned colder. It is not about guilt. It is about headlines. The board is nervous. Ryan looked torn. His eyes met Maya's filled with frustration, apology, and something deeper. Give me time, he said softly. I will fix this. But by the end of the day, the official notice arrived. Effective immediately, Maya's position was put on hold. Her access badge was deactivated. As she packed her things in silence, her coworkers avoided her eyes. Only one young designer dared to whisper, I am sorry. This is not fair. Maya forced a smile. It is all right. It was good while it lasted. She walked out into the fading afternoon light, the city wind cutting against her cheeks. The streets felt colder than before, harsher. She clutched her sketchbook to her chest and kept walking, her heart heavy but her steps steady. That night, Ryan sat alone in his office, scrolling through endless reports. He found a trail, a series of leaked files sent from Claire's computer to an online tabloid. Betrayal stared back at him in black and white. He closed his laptop slowly, fury simmering under his calm exterior. You wanted a scandal, he murmured, but you are about to learn what truth looks like. Outside, rain began to fall again, tapping softly against the windows. Somewhere across the city, Maya sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the old handkerchief with the stitched initials. R.C. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Kindness, she whispered, is still worth it, even when it hurt. The next morning, Ryan arrived at the Carter Foundation earlier than anyone. The building was still quiet, the air sharp with the smell of fresh coffee and rain. He walked straight to the conference room where the board members were already gathering for an emergency meeting. When he entered, the room fell silent. The chairman cleared his throat. Ryan, this situation with Miss Torres has caused concern. The press is questioning your leadership. We need to distance the company from this issue. Ryan placed a folder on the table. Before you make that decision, you should see this. Oh, inside were printed emails and data logs, showing exactly how the rumors had started. Claire's name was on every message. Gasps echoed around the room. Ryan's tone was calm but unshakable. This company was built on integrity. If we punish honesty to protect appearances, we deserve to fall. Claire stood, pale and defensive. You are overreacting. I did what was necessary for the brand. Ryan looked at her evenly. The brand you were supposed to protect is kindness. You forgot that. Doe. Security escorted her out minutes later. When the board adjourned, Ryan did not wait. He called a press conference that same afternoon. The cameras flashed as he stepped up to the podium. His voice carried steady and clear through the microphones. There have been rumors about a young woman in this company, a woman whose only mistake was showing compassion. The truth is simple. Months ago, I collapsed on a rainy street. Maya Torres was the only person who stopped to help me. Without her, I would not be standing here today. The room fell utterly still. Reporters lowered their cameras, listening. Ryan continued. She did not ask for attention or reward. She simply acted with humanity. That is the kind of person we should honor, not disgrace. He paused, emotion tightening his voice. I have reinstated Miss Torres effective immediately. And I am proud to say, she is now the lead creative for our next campaign. Hands that help. Oh, applause broke out among the employees gathered at the back. Some were in tears. Meanwhile, across town, Maya sat in her apartment, watching the broadcast on a small television. When she heard her name, her hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks as Ryan's words filled the room. He ended with quiet conviction. Kindness saved my life once. It is time we let it save the world. Maya closed her eyes, overwhelmed. For the first time in weeks, the weight in her chest lifted. The rain outside slowed, light tapping, turning to stillness. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. It is time to come home. She smiled through the tears, whispering, "Thank you, Ryan." And for the first time since the storm began, she felt peace. 1 year later, the city gathered beneath a wide white tent on the rooftop of the Carter Foundation building. The golden afternoon light touched everything with warmth. A banner fluttered gently above the crowd, reading "One Kindness Day." Volunteers, employees, and families filled the space with laughter and soft conversation. The mural that Maya had designed stretched across the far wall, bright and full of life hands, reaching toward one another in a circle of color. Maya stood near the edge of the platform, wearing a pale yellow dress, her sketchbook tucked under one arm. It still held the old white handkerchief, now clean and pressed. The initials, RC, shone faintly under the sunlight. Ryan stepped up to the microphone, smiling as he looked at her. His voice carried clearly across the rooftop. "A year ago, this foundation faced a storm. Today, we celebrate the light that followed. Kindness began with one simple act, a stranger stopping in the rain. That single moment changed 2 lives, and now it inspires thousands." Applause rippled through the crowd. Maya lowered her head, her heart full. Ryan continued, "Our new outreach center will open next month, helping young artists who need a second chance. It will be called the Open Hands Studio, created by Miss Maya Torres." The audience rose to their feet. Maya's eyes filled with tears. When Ryan stepped away from the microphone, he crossed the stage toward her. "Maya," he said softly, holding out a small velvet box. "You once gave me back my life. I would like to spend the rest of it proving I deserved it." She gasped as he opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring, and next to it, folded neatly, the same white handkerchief. He went down on one knee as the crowd fell silent. "You missed your interview that day," he said with a smile, "but you found your destiny." Maya's tears slipped freely now. "And you found your heart?" she whispered. The applause that followed seemed to carry across the entire city. Ryan stood and drew her into an embrace as camera flashes lit the air around them. Later, as the sun set, music played softly and the rooftop filled with dancing and laughter. Maya looked out over the skyline, her hand resting in Ryan's. The wind brushed against them gently, carrying the scent of fresh rain. A voice echoed over the speakers, part of the closing ceremony. "Kindness is never wasted. It simply finds its way back home." Maya smiled, resting her head against Ryan's shoulder. Below them, the city lights flickered on, one by one, tiny beacons against the growing night. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that her story, born in rain and struggle, had finally come full circle in love, justice, and peace.